Think you know the extent of slavery's brutality? Think again. History's chilling secrets are about to be unveiled, exposing a level of agony and torment that history books have shied away from. Prepare to encounter shocking truths about the horrors of slavery that defy conventional belief. Embark with us on a journey to confront the long-buried sorrows of yesteryears, compelling us to confront a reality so monstrous that it fundamentally challenges our understanding of human nature. Are you prepared to unmask the darkness and challenge your understanding? The topic of slave breeding is not only historically sensitive, but also deeply complex, as it delves into the coerced reproduction of enslaved individuals during the era of American slavery. Over time, the historical understanding of this practice has evolved, shedding light on the profound implications it had for countless lives. In this video, we embark on a journey to uncover 10 lesser-known and distressing facts that illuminate specific facets of the practice of slave breeding in America. Before we delve into the grim history of this deeply troubling practice, it is essential to comprehend the magnitude of its impact on the lives of enslaved individuals. The history of slave breeding in America is not only a chapter of the past, but a reflection of the exploitation and dehumanization that marked the era of American slavery. This video aims to shed light on 10 lesser-known facts about this distressing practice, offering insights into its prevalence, impact, and the lives of those who endured its horrors. By acknowledging these painful truths, we honor the resilience of those who suffered and ensure that their stories are never forgotten. Here are some of the lesser-known facts about slavery. Enslaved individuals as instruments of labor multiplication. Slave breeding was a calculated strategy adopted by certain slaveholders to meet the unrelenting need for labor. It entailed coercing or compelling enslaved individuals into sexual unions to generate offspring intended for labor. Among these, enslaved women held a pivotal role, seen as prized possessions exploited to satisfy their owners' economic motives. This dehumanizing practice subjected them to harrowing treatment, a grim reality detailed in the narratives of renowned abolitionists and formerly enslaved individuals such as Frederick Douglass. Dehumanization of enslaved men. The spotlight of historical narratives often gravitates towards the plight of enslaved women, but it is of paramount importance to acknowledge that their male counterparts did not escape the horrific realities of forced breeding. The prevailing discourse frequently obscures the experiences of enslaved men who, like women, endured unimaginable exploitation driven by their physical attributes and overall well-being. Within the context of their subjugation, these men were branded with derogatory terms such as studs or breeding stock, reducing them to objects solely meant for procreation. This degrading fate mirrors the dehumanizing destiny thrust upon enslaved women, illustrating a shared experience of being stripped of their inherent humanity and relegated to mere instruments for the purpose of reproduction. In contemplating this grim chapter of history, one is confronted with the stark truth that autonomy and dignity were utterly disregarded in the eyes of those who wielded power. The systemic oppression that these enslaved men faced was not confined to physical brutality alone. It extended to the profound violation of their agency and self-worth. By delving into the untold stories of these men, we unravel a narrative of suffering that resonates across gender lines, underscoring the all-encompassing inhumanity of the institution of slavery. Distorted rewards for enslaved men. Within the grim landscape of American slavery, the dehumanization of enslaved men took on an even darker hue with the disturbing practice of rewarding those who could impregnate the most women. This twisted mindset was a stark reflection of the plantation owners' callous disregard for human dignity. Enslaved men were not only robbed of their autonomy, but also subjected to a sickening incentive system that perpetuated the cycle of exploitation. The horrifying reality was that those who succeeded in impregnating multiple women became objects of admiration within the enslaved community itself. This disturbing phenomenon highlighted the extent to which the dehumanization had infiltrated every facet of society, creating a hierarchical structure even within the oppressed population. These men, coerced into fulfilling a role that violated their most intimate rights, found themselves elevated for their ability to conform to their oppressors' desires. Extreme measures for successful breeding. The horrors of slave breeding reached appalling extremes as certain slaveholders resorted to physical coercion, forced sexual encounters, and sexual violence. Enslaved individuals faced the brutal stripping of their autonomy and dignity, enduring dehumanization that fueled the vicious cycle of exploitation. This revelation unveils the profound depths of cruelty that enslaved individuals were forced to endure, serving as a haunting reminder of the inhumane treatment they suffered. Enslaved individuals as property for economic gain. Enslaved individuals were seen by slave owners as valuable property, mere capital assets to be exploited for financial advantage. This degrading perspective stripped human beings of their humanity, transforming them into commodities valued solely for their reproductive capabilities and labor contributions. Historical records and first-hand accounts unveil the heartless treatment and horrific sexual abuse suffered by enslaved women, amplifying the economic agenda behind coerced breeding. These narratives serve as a stark reminder of the entrenched brutality that defined the practice of slave breeding. Dive into history's haunting legacy as we unravel inheritance of bondage for enslaved children. How did the chains of slavery persist through generations? Join us on a journey to understand the past's gripping influence. Inheritance of bondage for enslaved children. The offspring resulting from forced breeding confronted a perpetual existence of enslavement, mirroring the subjugation endured by their parents. These children were denied the joys of childhood, access to education, and opportunities for personal development, their lives predetermined to serve under the yoke of servitude from the moment they were born. This stark reality accentuates the lasting intergenerational repercussions of slavery, wherein the unbroken chain of bondage was seamlessly handed down from one generation to the next. Strategic buying and selling of enslaved individuals. The heart-wrenching practice of systematically buying and selling enslaved individuals was rooted in their reproductive capacities and the perceived value of their offspring. This grim strategy shattered families, treating individuals as mere commodities to maintain a cycle of bondage that stretched from one generation to the next. Enslaved people were not seen as human beings with inherent worth. They were pawns in a cruel economic game. This ruthless approach exposed the extent to which slaveholders were willing to go to ensure a steady supply of labor for their plantations. The separation of families and the disruption of relationships were deemed acceptable sacrifices in pursuit of economic gain. The practice underscores the deeply ingrained dehumanization that characterized slavery, where individuals' lives were manipulated and controlled for profit. Separation of families for economic gain. Slave breeding's impact reached far beyond immediate suffering, leaving lasting scars. Families were systematically torn apart, illustrating slaveholders' prioritization of economic interests over preserving familial bonds. The heart-wrenching sight of children forcibly separated from parents serves as a stark reminder of the dehumanization and commodification inherent to slavery. The practice laid bare how enslaved individuals were treated as property, subjected to the whims of profit-seeking owners. The emotional and psychological toll of forced family separations cannot be overstated, as generations endured the trauma of being torn from loved ones. This calculated cruelty highlights how the institution of slavery was built on a foundation of callous disregard for the intrinsic value of human relationships. Children robbed of their parents' care, spouses ripped away from one another. These were the tragic consequences of a system rooted in economic exploitation. The dehumanization and disregard for familial bonds illustrate how the practice of slave breeding extended beyond physical brutality, shaping the very fabric of enslaved individuals' lives and leaving an indelible mark on the legacy of American history. The history of slave breeding in America is not a distant memory, but a harrowing testament to the cruelty, exploitation, and dehumanization that marked the era of American slavery. The stories of those who endured forced breeding, as well as the lesser-known facts surrounding this practice, shine a light on the dark legacy that continues to shape our understanding of the past.